I want to really extend a very, very warm welcome to all of you who are here in the room and also to those who are joining online. I am seeing now 39 persons online. So I want to extend a very warm welcome to you who are joining us online. I need to recognize my colleague. I haven't seen him for several years now, Nick, from the UK, also from the university, London Metropolitan University, was associated with the university many years now, and so welcome. Good to see you. Good to see you, Nick. Okay, so my presentation is more a context setting one for our discussion, and you know, the fisheries sector is very important, and we face a lot of challenges. But I believe there is a pathway. There's a pathway for prosperous, sustainable, and resilient fisheries and aquaculture, even in this time of climate change and all the numerous problems and challenges that we face in the fisheries and aquaculture sector. Fisheries sector is very, very important for a number of reasons, including food security and nutrition, employment, generation of foreign exchange, and the livelihood opportunity that the sector provides for a lot of people, especially some of the poor and most vulnerable members of our society. We quite often say that the fisheries sector is our main social security mechanism for people in our countries, and indeed to a great extent I think that statement is true. However, the reality is that our fishing communities are quite vulnerable, quite vulnerable to climate change and the associated impacts. I mean, it's located in the land-water interface, and really, in many cases, our fishing community bears the brunt of tropical storm systems as they come ashore, because they take some of the sting out of these systems as they come ashore. And the reality is that over the years, they have sustained major, significant damages and losses throughout the entire production supply chain system, from the marine resources, the ecosystem, the coastal ecosystem, all the way up to the fishing boats, vessels, gears, the processing establishment, and also the settlement, fishing settlements, and the homes and infrastructure in the fishing communities. And we have recent examples in Dominica, in Bahamas, and I think most of our countries in recent times have experienced some damage and loss from the increasingly severe tropical systems that have impacted us. And on top of that, many of our fishing communities, they already exist at a fairly basic, precarious, vulnerable level. Some of them are among the poorest communities in some of our countries. So they're generally vulnerable. And so improving resilience of the fisheries and aquaculture sector is indeed a high priority for all of us. Now, yesterday I mentioned the numerous challenges that we face in the fisheries sector, from overfishing, pollution, degradation of coastal and marine habitats, weak governance systems, etc., limited and difficulty getting the financing and investment that we need. I won't spend any time on this, but I mention this because when we think about climate change, we need to think about climate change on top of and adding and creating synergy with all these other challenges that we have in the fisheries sector. It is the synergistic impact of all of these things put together that makes it so difficult for our fisheries and marine resources and ocean economy. So indeed, we face many serious challenges. But in this slide, I'm really just depicting, and this is taken from the IPCC special report from 2029, but it shows what is happening in the oceans with respect to climate change. So in the middle, you will see the reference to triple threats for the oceans. The greenhouse gases, including and in particular carbon dioxide, but by no means that's the only one. It's warming, increasing the temperature in the atmosphere. Now, the oceans is helping us out big time, big time. 90% of the added heat is actually absorbed into the ocean. And I tell you, if the ocean wasn't able to do that, I mean, we would be roasting now. So, we thank God we have, so the ocean that is playing that critical function, but it has negative implications on the ocean, of course. Right. The ocean is also absorbing a lot of the carbon dioxide. Over 25% of the carbon dioxide is being absorbed by the ocean. But there's a problem. The ocean, as it absorbs the carbon dioxide, it is becoming more acidic. And that's a problem. So it is becoming warmer, it is becoming more acidic, and actually warmer, more acidic means it can carry less oxygen. That's also a problem. So those are the three critical impacts on the ocean and the ocean ecosystems that we rely on for so much benefits to our countries. The greenhouse gases continue to increase in the atmosphere, and so these processes are, according to the expert, actually accelerating rather than decelerating even at this time. Now the result of all of that warming and changes in the chemical composition, particularly the acidity, is sea level rise. Of course, the warm water expands the ocean waters, so we are having sea level rise, and Keith might tell you more about that. Experts and Frederick, they're experts in climate change, but the sea level is rising, and there are a lot of challenges and problems associated with that, and we touch on that a little more. Then we have the challenges of bleaching of our coral reefs. Major problem, because in many of our countries, most of our countries in the Caribbean, reef fisheries is very, very important. In some cases, it's the main fisheries, reef fisheries. Now, this is fishing taking place on the species that live on the reef. Now, we use the word bleaching, but a better word is killing. The reefs are dying. When we say bleach, I mean they lose the symbiotic algae that lives in it, and basically they become white. So we say they're bleached, but they're dead when they're bleached. So maybe some people do not realize that this is actually killing the reefs. And we have sustained a number of incidents over the past 20, 30 years, and this year is probably going to be another major bleaching event. So I don't know how long the coral reefs can withstand this type of repeated stress and bleaching because of the warmer water. So it's a major concern. And of course, we'll come back to that. But, it's not just that the reefs are dying. It's that everything else associated with the ecosystem, the biodiversity, the fish stocks, and going up the chain, the human activities and the benefits, we're losing all of those with more and more bleaching. All right. We have also seen a bloom in algae, marine algae. We're all used to sargassum. But apart from that, I mean, there are some more serious algal bloom, harmful or toxic algal bloom that is actually increasing because of, all these changes in the chemistry in the marine environment, warming, nutrients, and acidity, and so on. And these can be very harmful to marine life as well as to human. And we're in this part of the Caribbean. We're familiar with Secretariat. I mean, that's one of the harmful marine algae, but there are several others. And climate change is only accelerating these incidents of harmful algal bloom globally. So the trend, is upward. And of course, even though it's not only harmful algae that's blooming, I mentioned sargassum already. That's another marine algae that is blooming and creating a whole lot of problems for us in the Caribbean region. These massive blooms are continuing. The trend is upward since it started in 2011. In 2011, there was a big uproar about the bloom, but the blooms are now significantly larger than what we experienced in 2011, the first time we had that massive bloom. I believe in 2011 the biomass average month might have been about 2 million metric ton. Now it is almost between 18 to 20 million metric ton blooming each month. So it's a significant change. But then we also have the impacts on marine habitats. So we mentioned coral reefs already, but there are a whole lot of other habitats from the seaweeds, tilapia, various seaweed, seagrass beds, and the mangroves, etc. And the marine species that are associated with them that are being impacted negatively. And then this whole issue of acidification. Unfortunately, it doesn't receive as much attention as it should. We pay a lot of attention to warming water, but much less so to the impacts, the implication, the consequences of the increasingly acidic water that we are contending with. But they have an impact on a lot of marine organisms, those that have shell, whether it is clams, oysters, lobster, conch, plankton, crustacean, shrimp, etc. I mean, these things that have these shells have been affected. And then also, of course, the disruption in fisheries and the implication for livelihoods. So I've mentioned some of these already, but the fact is climate change is affecting fisheries big time, fisheries and aquaculture big time, via the warming, the acidification, also the changes in ocean circulation. And in recent times, they have been hearing a lot, and scientists have been sounding the alarm about the changes in the ocean circulation system, because this could have major implication. Now, the changes are already taking place, and a part of the reason why we have the sargassum inundating our beaches is believed to be partly because of more smaller but still significant changes in the ocean's circulation that's allowing leakage of the sargassum from the Atlantic Ocean and bringing it across onto our beaches and in our coastal waters. So the change in ocean circulation is actually quite significant. And then, of course, we have the increased frequency and severity of extreme events, extreme storm events, and apart from the problems with the surf and wind and water coming ashore and creating havoc in our coastal areas, we also have issues, and from fisheries, issues of low salinity, because we have a lot of fresh water and river runoff, And these can cause major problems. I remember about maybe 20 years ago, or maybe even a little more than that, when we had this massive fish kill from the Guyana coast all the way up to Puerto Rico, I believe. Massive, massive fish kill. And it turned out to be because of a huge infusion of fresh water from the South American river system, Essequibo, Amazon, and so on. And the bacteria, freshwater bacteria, in that plume of water that was affecting our reef fishes, and there was a Streptococcus inei was the name of the freshwater bacteria that was infecting the fish and causing this massive fish kill. So when you have low salinity water and water that is contaminated, these things are associated with putting the marine organisms and ecosystem under severe stress, and in some cases lead to fish kills. The increased turbidity in the water. So when you have all this fresh water from heavy rainfalls inland caused by climate change, a lot of sediment, of course, in addition to the pollutants, pesticides, etc., all ending up in the marine environment, and they're causing damage in the marine environment, impacting on fisheries. So the warming water affects fish distribution, migration, and the whole population dynamics, the breeding, the growth, the mortality, the abundance, the distribution of the fish stocks are affected. And these all have implications for our food security. Lobster, for example, normally spawn at 27 degrees centigrade. If they do not have that, if the temperature is elevated or if it's low, the spawning will be reduced significantly, or they don't spawn at all. And so most fish have some range within which they are able to reproduce, and not to mention the pollution and all these other things that also impact on the reproductive capacity spawning of our marine species. So these are major problems. But one of the things that the experts tell us is that with climate change and with warming waters, we're probably going to see a decline in tropical species because fewer can tolerate the warmer water. And what you're seeing is a north and southward drift or shift in fish, because they will go and try to stay with the water temperature that is suitable for their metabolism and function. Just like us, I mean, they don't have air conditioning, so they have to go with the water that is more suited for their functioning. So that could have implication for local fishers and for our food security. The composition, species composition of the fish, that's also changing. Some are thriving because they can tolerate the changes better. Others are declining. So what we have is a major imbalance in the system overall that is upsetting the whole ecosystem. And honestly, at this point, we really don't understand what is going on. We know there are changes. We see some of them, but a lot of changes are taking place at this time, and they are all affecting the system. So, and that would have implication for us going forward. And I mentioned already the importance of coral reef as habitat for our fish population. The fact is, there are many species that need a coral reef to spawn, to live. This nursery, well, the coral reef, the seagrass bed, mangrove, it's all of them. They all have very critical function in terms of supporting a healthy fish population. And then the issue of the acidification, and I saw this term, it's just think about osteoporosis in people. That's what is happening. That is what climate change and the more acidic water is causing. So basically, it's the more acidic water it results in the minerals used by shellfish and whether crustaceans or mollusk or whatever, anything that has shell and skeleton to basically dissolve away. I mean, at the end of the day, that is what is happening. Or they need to expend much more energy making their shells and maintaining, keeping their shells. And so, they become vulnerable, susceptible to disease and all type of things. And, it upset their whole biology. So acidic water is weakening the exoskeleton and skeletal formation, shell formation of so many species. Now, the important thing about the marine environment is that it's a web, right? And some of these things are at the base of the web. So if you destroy or degrade the base on which the ecosystem, the other marine species, whether fish and other preferred species and reptiles and mammals and so on, all depend. If you remove the base, if you degrade the base, then everything will be affected, and that is, I think, that is what is happening. The whole balance has been disturbed, and the graph you see there shows the trend as from 1985 until now, the change in acidity. So it's showing the pH gradually going down, and from the industrialization period in the 1850s, 60s, thereabout, what you see is a gradual but continuing trend of decline in the acidity of the water. So we also have these extreme events that I think we're all familiar with, and the impact that they're having on the fisheries sector. The boats, the fishing gears, the infrastructure, as well as the marine habitat, the coral reefs also are degraded and damaged and destroyed by these severe weather systems. Aquaculture facilities are easily destroyed during storms. I have a good friend in Belize who, after 2 years, 2 hits in frequent succession, he basically had to give up his aquaculture operation. Storms very often introduce pathogens in the aquaculture system, and that's one of the weaknesses in aquaculture, and it's becoming more vulnerable because of climate change. And a few years ago, Belize aquaculture production was basically wiped out because of a disease infestation, and the industry basically had to close everything, and they're trying to rebuild. And rebuilding is very difficult. It takes years to get your industry up to level. At the peak, they were producing like $50 million worth of aquaculture exporting, and that went to zero. Major economic impact, and job losses and so on, because of these things. Right. Okay, so we can move on to the next slide. So in the next few slides, I'll be looking at the policy and strategic framework, etc. So for the reasons that I've mentioned so far, climate change is a high priority for our country. It's an existential issue for us as small island developing states. For some people, it's political football, but for us, it is really major priority, and our governments have really been investing the little resources that we have in addressing this and trying to mobilize attention, support at the international level. So we have the Regional Climate Change Center, and Keith is on the center. Will tell you more about what they're doing. It's a key institution, key mechanism established by our governments to lead and spearhead our climate response, adaptation, mitigation, etc. But you also have SEDIMA, the Disaster Emergency Management Authority looking at protecting our assets, especially the built infrastructure, and keeping people safe from these severe systems that impact us. CRFM is a part of our portfolio. It's an important part, especially working and promoting issues related to the fishery sector. Now, we have developed, in collaboration with SEDEMA and 5C, a regional strategy and action plan on climate change adaptation and disaster risk management in the fishery sector. And that, is like a policy statement, policy document guiding our response. And very importantly, we have the Caribbean Community Common Fisheries Policy that I mentioned yesterday. And one of the key protocols under it, there's a whole protocol dealing with adaptation to climate change and disaster risk management, dealing with disaster risk management in the fishery sector. So those are the key policy instruments guiding our actions in the fishery sector. And of course, our strategic plan of 2022 to 2030 also includes a strategic objective addressing climate change and provisions to deal with climate change, because it is so important. Of course, when I say climate change, normally we have to think of climate change and disaster risk management and preparation, etc. So even though I say sometimes fisheries, usually I mean fisheries and aquaculture, and climate change, we always have to think about not just climate change but the adaptation and preparedness. Right. So we're thinking about the resilient future for fisheries and aquaculture. These are some of the key instruments. Number 3 on this is the risk insurance for the fisheries sector. And yesterday we had a discussion about insurance and financing for the fisheries sector, and we will be hearing more about the financing challenges, etc. But one of the things that we have been working on for some years now is the issue of risk insurance for the fisheries. This is critical because we have to spread the risk. It's just unsustainable for when you have these disasters for a government to find the money almost every year now to with bailing out the industry. So the Caribbean Catastrophic Risk Insurance Segregated Portfolio Company, we all know it as CRIF. We have been working with them for a number of years now to put in place a parametric insurance scheme, which is a scheme that the government would buy for the fishers, but there's also a private insurance component to the whole initiative. But it has still been piloted. I mean, the Coast Caribbean Ocean and Aquaculture Sustainability Facility, Coast. That's what the policy is called, the Coast policy. It was developed by CRFM, World Bank, with support from the State Department of the United States. They contributed some funds, and were able to work together to make some progress here. Now, in my opinion, this is very, very important. So St. Lucia and Grenada, they have been piloting the scheme since 2019, 2020. We had a meeting a few months ago, and one of the things that is unfortunate is that we have not been able to test the policy, how it works, and to see the payout, because in these countries we have not had any problems triggering the payment. But that is good, and perhaps better. But it's a policy still being developed, and they're trying to refine it based on the experience gained in St. Lucia and Grenada. The CRIF is now really trying to scale up and to reach out to more countries, to get more Caribbean countries on board. Because at the end of the day, in my opinion, I mean, this is very important. It's much better to get the insurance, have that protection, so that if we have a worst case scenario, we can get some funding to support recovery and rebuilding of the sector. Of course, the insurance is always quite complicated, and CRIF is a private operation, so those are some of the challenges. We still have some way to go, but insurance is very important. Another thing about the insurance that I should mention, the CRIF, the course policy, is that it is seeking to provide protection, but it is also incentivizing the implementation and compliance with best practices, in particular the principles and key measures laid out in the Caribbean Community Common Fisheries Policy. So the more countries are implementing climate smart, good practice and practices to ensure sustainability, the lower their premium will be, and I think a little higher their payouts will be. So it is designed in a way to incentivize and encourage climate smart practices and sustainable practices in the fishery sector. Quite an interesting arrangement. Okay, and so just a couple of a few of the key projects that we are involved with that focus on climate change. Now we have had a number of projects in recent times, over recent years, addressing climate change, because I told you climate change was and have been prioritized by our governments for some time now. So we have had a number of projects. Recent one, the PPCR project, the CC for fish project, and others. But earlier this year, we got funding for a Canadian-funded project called Starfish, Sustainable Technologies for Adaptation and Resilience in the Fisheries Sector. We are in the process of implementing a New Zealand-funded project aimed at dealing with sargassum, developing commercial products from sargassum seaweed. So it's developing sargassum products for climate resilience. I mean, that's what it is. So we have the sargassum and these other algal bloom. We're trying to, instead of just let them be a problem and a nuisance, trying to use them in a valuable way, beneficial way, to create jobs and create products that we need. And then we have the GEF funded Blue Economy project called the BCLME Plus project, promoting national blue economic priorities through marine spatial planning, MPA, and value chain development. Again, climate change is all over that project still. And then we have a small project that Frederic will be talking about, because we contracted them to assist with this, and it's the carbon footprint assessment of a fishery in Belize as a pilot, and leading to decarbonization to the extent that we are able to move towards carbon neutral fisheries or low carbon fisheries. So you will hear a little more about that. And then there is the Road to Resilience project, DCF. And Keith, we're working with the 5Cs to develop and implement this project. So the PPG grant has been approved, and we're now going to be moving towards developing the project document. So those are just a few of the projects. So in conclusion, climate change is accelerating and affecting our oceans and as well as our inland aquatic systems. And it's bringing about major changes in the ecosystems, and overall, a lot of these are negative changes. So we're seeing all type of negative changes. I won't go through them again, but it is something we have to pay very careful attention to. And tropical fish production is expected to decline. That's a very important message. And so, we have to be careful and implement adaptation actions to address the challenges that we're having now and that we anticipate in the future. But, there are many things we can do to secure a sustainable and resilient future for our fisheries. So we need to be working together in a concerted coordinated, multidisciplinary, multi-sectorial way to address the many challenges, because this requires all of government, all of community approach and regional cooperation for us to address the numerous challenges. But maintaining the resilience of the ecosystem is something we have to pay attention to. There's no way around it. The ecosystems have been impacted, and we need to adopt ecosystem-based approaches and do the things that we can to rebuild and protect our mangroves, for example. Mangroves are so important in offering shoreline protection and reducing the more severe impacts of storm surges and so on, and even capturing sediments and runoff from the land. So many ways. Of course, we talk a lot about the ecosystem, the coral reef ecosystem. Again, we have to do all we can, and there are things, practical things we can do. So we have to pay attention to that. We also have to spread the risk, through livelihood diversification. I mentioned the risk insurance, and we need public-private sector partnerships. So planning and preparedness, again, is a must. There's a lot that we can achieve in terms of protecting ourselves if we're able to think about what we're facing and put in place just common sense plans so that we know what to do, how to act when we're facing some of these severe weather systems, for example, and empowering local communities. I think that is so important, and very often, we do a lot of things at the national level and don't pay attention to the local community. But at the end of the day, we need to make sure that each local community has the resources, the knowledge, the system, because let me tell you, in the worst case scenario, when you have a severe storm and many of these communities become isolated, it is the local action at the local level that will make the difference and save lives in those critical moments. So our local communities, our fishing communities need to be hardened. They need to have safe areas where, in worst case scenario, they can gather, stay there, and be safe, and empowered and know what to do, and organize, and the nurses and medical practitioners, whoever you have there, know what to do, and people know where to go, what they can do to protect themselves and prepare themselves for, even food and water and simple things like that. Very, very important. And I think this is my final slide now. So number of other things we need to do. We have to use the available technology to have really robust warning system, and I think we have improved a lot in this area to share information and to facilitate communication regarding what's happening. Fishing vessels need to be rendered more suitable for the new environment that we're operating in. So they need to be more stable, larger, safer, etc., to protect the livelihoods and the life of people who are operating. And they also need to be able to go a little further. Most of our vessels in the region are small vessels, open vessels with outboard motors, and really they just don't have the capacity or the design to take people safely out in deep water. So we have to look at that. I know in Antigua and Barbuda, you have upgraded your fleet quite a bit over the past 30, 40 years, quite a bit. So, but in many other countries, that's not the case. And as the minister mentioned earlier, we need to accelerate the transition towards more fuel efficient and renewable energy technology in the fishery system, on the boats, in the storage, distribution, processing, establishment, etc. So we still have a long way to go in this area along the entire fishery supply chain. Underwater types remained intact, and fishers were able to go and to catch fish around them, especially in the immediate aftermath of the hurricane, and they still were able to get fish to feed the community, and some communities that were isolated from this side. So this is just an example of a climate smart fishing approach, that can be very helpful. And of course, building, or in some cases rebuilding, our safe harbors, shelters, piers, jetties, etc., and fisheries infrastructure, recognizing the threat that our countries face with climate change and these severe weather systems. So investing in aquaculture and climate smart aquaculture practices, including breeding of species that can thrive in the new environment, the changing environment that we are entering into. Of course, with aquaculture, you have to think about proper zoning and design of your system to resist the storms that we expect. And critically now, we also have to invest in improving data, knowledge, and information about our fisheries and marine system. This is so important going forward. Things are changing fast, and unless we can keep up with understanding the changes and the implications, it's going to be very difficult for us. So we have to invest like we have never done before in research and data collection and monitoring and accessing traditional knowledge about our fisheries system and our marine ecosystem, and use all of that use all of that to make decision, to plan and to make decision. And of course, the important financing challenges that you're going to hear more about the other presentation. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. That was an overview to establish the context for our discussion dealing with decarbonization and financing. Thank you.